Hi everyone, this video is split into two parts. So first will be a discussion about solo gameplay, what makes it different from Fireteam, and general rules of thumb for efficient use of your time. And then in the back half of the video will be a loosely scripted breakdown of a recent Sundered Doctrine solo run that I did, or at least of the parts that demonstrate ideas that I talk about in part 1. Hope you enjoy. When it comes to solo play in Destiny, there's some unique challenges that will often either never come up in a Fireteam setting or be mitigated by having multiple teammates. Typically, you're able to designate roles for each person to have, know what weapons they're using, and therefore their killing power, and also you have someone to fall back on if things get out of hand. In solo play, there's often no fallback option if things go sideways, and it is entirely up to you to either correct the situation or avoid getting there in the first place. Knowing an activity in great detail before going into it solo make preparing and strategizing a much more simple and less headache-inducing experience. This is the exact reason why a raid like Vault of Glass or Crota's End was cleared so quickly upon their re-release in Destiny 2, and conversely why Salvation's Edge took so long. Without knowledge of the encounters beyond what is being posted in a place like Raid Secrets, devising a strategy that is capable of handling all aspects of the encounter is difficult. Solo play presents an uncommon, at least for Destiny, mental challenge. Many solo dungeon or raid encounters either take way longer to do, like Ghost of the Deep's final boss taking anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes, sometimes even longer, or they demand that you are absolutely perfect for 7 to 10 minutes, like Nezarec, although that solo is actually fairly easy, but it fits. Before entering an activity, it's important to focus on mental resilience and flexibility if a strategy does not play out exactly as you had hoped. Some ways I found that help me include playing music in the background, physically pausing for a moment and just backing up from my keyboard, asking myself if I'm ready to go through this experience, and also reviewing my mental plan. Once you're actually in the activity, there's usually no timer unless you're in a GM that's pushing you forward between encounters. Also, calculated aggression is important, especially in encounters like the opening of Root of Nightmares that require you to slay out super hard, but not at the expense of your otherwise calm mental state. If something doesn't work, be prepared to switch it up, change some things around, and then go again. If you saw my other video on some of the essential weapons for solo players, you might have noticed the trend of splash damage and ease of use, two things that are the cornerstone of efficiency in solo content. Let's talk about both of these traits in a little bit more detail. It's an unfortunate fact of the game that you will not have enough time to shoot a hand cannon shot at every single ad in the room. Splash perks allow you to deal with large groups of ads while not putting too much of our limited mental bandwidth into dealing with all of them. If you saw my other video talking about all of these guns, except for Queenbreaker, but that has its own specific use, all of them have access to super powerful splash ad clear perks. This commenter also brought up Tinashe's Mastery from Iron Banner and VS Velocity Baton from Vesper's Host. These two specifically are praised for their utility as well as their splash. Tinashe's has the capacity to deal with 2 champion types thanks to Chill Clip, this season 3 thanks to Anti-Barrier Sidearm being around. Velocity Baton is, as this other commenter says, a build-defining weapon. Its use of attrition orbs makes it absolutely incredible for not just ad clear, but also armor charge and fueling our abilities. This doesn't really get considered as often as I feel like it should, but ease of use in solo content is very important, especially when you're just starting to get into doing solo content. Weapons that require a high maintenance or a convoluted setup, looking at you, Hezin, can be extremely daunting if you've never had to manage all of that before. Weapons like Tinashe's and Velocity Baton, again, are so strong, in large part due to their ease of use. This is also why Queenbreaker has become so popular, because it's not only doing ridiculous damage, although that is a big part of it, but it is also super easy to do that damage with. There's no setup required outside of being on the correct scope and not missing your shots. If something's easy to use, it frees up our, again, very limited mental bandwidth to do things that actually progress the encounter forward. Alright. This is a solo run that I did last Thursday, I believe. And I'm not going to go through like every little thing, because if I did, then this video would be like an hour long. But I'm going to go through a few of the things that seem more important, I guess, or more relevant to the current video. So the first thing I want to go over is this opening transition right here. It's at like 500% speed, but you know, whatever. I wanted to include this because I know a lot of people don't particularly like using Eager Edge or aren't comfortable when they're around as many enemies as like this room, or especially in the second room right here. I know a lot of people don't like using Eager Edge when they're this surrounded, but I would say it's worth putting in the time to become more comfortable with it. It's super useful to be able to still use the movement tech with Eager Edge, even if there are a ton of enemies around. So yeah, I would think about practicing if you're not comfortable with it. So let's move to the first encounter here. I think the first thing that you'll see is I'm on Peregrine Greaves now. This sort of comes with the encounter knowledge, you know, sort of pre-planning idea. Peregrine's one-shot subjugators in this encounter, which is obviously super helpful. And then also in my loadout, you'll see that I have Tinashe's on. That's specifically to deal with the husks because of how they group. They all kind of just run at you in a really tight group, so if you use Chill Clip, you can get all of them all at once, and they stop being a problem for a few seconds, which is usually all you need them to do. Just kind of back off for a minute. But yeah. The other thing I want to talk about in this encounter is Blow. So here, I'm going to go in and kill this guy. And instead of running back out into the middle room, something that I don't see a lot of people do is there are actually these pathways on the sides of the rooms. Every room has one that connects it to, you know, left to left, right to right. They're super useful for making the encounter not take a really long time. And I don't know why people don't use them, but it's super nice. And then the last thing that I want to talk about in this encounter is actually reading the last symbols, although yes, technically you can read all of them. So we keep going. Alright. Ooh, too far. So right here, you see that this was the last set of symbols. This was round 3. So all of them are blank. And something that you can do in this encounter and also in the final boss is you can fill in the blank, so to speak. You can only have a certain combination of symbols. I think there's a screenshot or like a chart on Reddit or something with all of the possible combinations. But basically what I did in this run was I just went around to all of the rooms, I think back here. And, you know, obviously the truth speaker is there, but you don't need to kill it. You can just run into each room, look at the symbols, and if you can piece it together yourself as to what the correct sequence would be, in this case, Pyramid Kill Worm, then you can really fly through this encounter, which is super nice because otherwise this encounter takes just so long. It's not that long, it's like 10 minutes, but it's 10 minutes longer than I'm sure anyone wants to be doing this encounter. But yeah. Alright, let's move on over to the second encounter. All the way up here. I'm not going to talk about the transition, the 1-2 transition here, because it's pretty straightforward. Just don't, you know, go crazy on the Indiana Jones section. So, we're at the start of the encounter. Immediately, I look over to this wheel because this is my damage strategy. This is the thing that I have planned to do beforehand. So I look over here, I look for kill, and I know how many resonance I need to get to kill. And also if I need to flip it, because at the end of each lock set progression, the lock moves one in the direction that it's turning. So shoot it to turn around. Now I know how much resonance I need to get to kill. I ignore the other wheels in this room because you don't really need to do anything with them. And also as a Titan, the state of the room after a damage phase doesn't really matter to me. But here I'm posted up waiting to kill the wizards as they spawn because I know their spawns. Helps you just to be really fast, especially in an encounter like this where, you know, when we're wanting to go to a damage phase, we have to push for it. So we're gonna kill the wizards. Personally, I like any weapon with D-stab in this encounter, but I'm also just a sucker for volatile rounds. Alright, so now my wheel is dunked. I can run up to the damage area after I stop shooting these things for no reason. Alright. Now I'm set up. I'm fully set up. I want to let this damage phase play because I actually think that this phase was terrible. But I'll just let it play first and then we can talk about it after it's done. So for me, this damage phase wasn't very good for two main reasons, although one is considerably less important than the other. The first was when I actually swapped to Cuirass. I'm generally a fan of doing it before damage even starts. Like, I'll put down my barricade to get Hoyle going, and then I'll just swap. But that's fine. For me, the big thing in this encounter was Anarchy. I basically never reloaded Anarchy before putting it away, even once. Which, yes, I know could be combated with a holster mod, but I'm inclined for Triple Surge in this case. Otherwise, it's not so bad. Coming out of a phase, you'll see. Ooh, spoilers. Alright, there we go. Any day now. There we go. Alright. So, you'll see as I sort of peek my head out that this entire room is pretty crazy right now. Like, it's not looking good. Obviously, I'm a Bolt Charge Titan, so that makes dealing with it considerably easier for me. But it's important to not lose your cool while you're sort of coming out of a damage phase, getting ready to re-enter the room, so to speak. You know, just take it nice and slow. That's really all you need to do. You'll see that I'm even using Bolt Charge just to deal with the rest of the room, using my abilities. I know that they'll come back, especially because I'm using a weapon that gives me volatile, and our artifact this season, you know, that just goes hand in hand with the sort of, you know, planning your loadout to be effective. In this case, avoid primary, like Reckless Oracle, or really any high RPM Void primary is good, just with all of the Void perks that we have. You saw me use it to weaken the boss during the damage phase, and it also gives volatile for ag clear and a small overshield. So overall, really good option. But yeah, that's all I've got here. Just, you know, if you don't have a timer pushing you forward, I know it seems like this encounter has a timer, but it really doesn't, because it can never go to kill itself. You have to put it there. So just play it slow, take your time. That's all you need. Let's move up to the third encounter. And immediately after starting the encounter, you'll see basically as soon as I kill these knights, run off to the side, and I am looking right here. I know I'm not looking at it in game, but in you know, with my eyes looking at it, it's right here where I will decide what I want to do, how I'm gonna approach the rest of the room. So first thing that I see is I have a symbol to do in this room. So I'm gonna hop on down here. I think I jumped ahead of where the knight was killed, but obviously kill the knight as fast as possible to spawn the pendants. That's pretty basic stuff. And then we come over. Once I'm out from downstairs, I'm gonna take a look at the wheel again. It's always a good idea, or I should say, it's never a bad idea to look at the wheel. You know, you're not on a timer. The wheel is literally telling you exactly what you need to do. So in this case, dark needs to be turned off, light on. Confirming that for myself before I head over to the right room. And then in this encounter specifically, what's about to happen right here is probably the most important thing. I'm already turning towards where this subjugator is going to spawn as I'm coming in the door. I already know as soon as I come to this door, I'm going to grenade and barricade immediately. I don't need to worry about using abilities right here because A, I have multi-mock equipped, so orbs out the ass, but also there's so much time between, what we're doing each individual mechanic that it's more worth it if you're solo to just use the abilities. You don't need them to be always at the ready. So in my opinion, it's better to just use them proactively instead of reactively. Especially when, like this season we have Bolt Charge healing us. I think it's more worth it to just have the healing happening as opposed to only popping it when you need it, because then you might not get it in time. But yeah, that's all that I have really. Let me know in the future if I should do more stuff like this for different dungeons, or if I should do like a super in-depth run or an actual like live commentary while I'm doing it, that sort of thing. But yeah, that's all I got. Bye-bye.